Good morning, everyone. How are we? We are very excited to have you all here this morning. My name is Sean, and I'm the founder of a wellbeing company called Energx. Energx specialises in burnout risk identification and prevention. I just want to start by acknowledging that we're meeting here this morning on the land of the traditional owners of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Just a little bit of background about why this event came about. So my partner in crime here today is Claire Salvetti, and I'll let her introduce herself in a second. But we are involved with a mental health task force for the creative industries, so for marketers, media, PR, as well as client-side marketers. There was the first mental health study for the industry was commissioned towards the end of last year, and one of the findings out of that was that 56% of marketers were experiencing mild to severe symptoms of depression and 55% with anxiety, which was doubling the national average. And so we've been part of the task force that's looking at why that's happening and what's coming and what we can do about that, essentially. And one of the shocking stats that I came across as part of this was that the World Health Organization actually says that women are experiencing depression at twice the rates of men, but we don't seem to be hearing about that. That led me to then take a look at the data that I've been collecting through Energx, and we've been lucky enough to support over 1,000 professional women over the last 18 months around their well-being. And one of the key questions that we ask people as part of assessing them is, how many of the last 10 days did you feel that you had enough energy for what's important to you? Right, so you might have a little number that sort of pops up in your head at the moment, and one of the stats we found is that's actually less than 50% of the time. You know, and it sort of sucks to feel that way, and obviously it has a profound impact on our ability both to be and feel successful. And so today's really about starting that conversation. We've got some amazing panelists, and I feel very lucky and humbled that have said yes to join us this morning. That are going to share their experiences, and really, hopefully today what we'd like is that you take away some of the practical things around how to think about your own well-being. And we do have a little bit of audience participation later on as well, but nothing too scary for you. So I'm going to hand it over to Claire. Thanks.
team from Home Media who know the story. But also too, then I moved back to Australia, so I had a new job. My husband was American, so he was trying to acclimatise. I thought I was Australian, been living overseas for 10 years. So all of this just built up and up and up. And then it's interesting because for me the symptom of the burnout was just feeling anxious all the time. So feeling as if I was getting up and doing email at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was trying to keep balance, and then I was going to the gym. Then I'd go home, I'd come home and have a glass of wine to try and calm down. Then I'd go to sleep, then I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning again. So for me, it is very much around why we may think it's black and white and what that work-life balance is. There's other factors which also, follow your personal, for me it was my personal life, which is really impacting, trying to hold it all together. And I think also too, in this age of automation, the feeling of connection is actually even more important. When we think about around our devices, that's around our devices and what we're doing around work. That being human and being vulnerable, being authentic is really important to maintain that energy, but also that motion as well.
Thank you, Michaela. Shannan?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this last night and was thinking, I said to my friend, I don't remember a time of ever waking up and not being tired. Like, I am just in a constant state of tiredness. I don't know what it feels like to not be tired. And I think as an Indigenous person as well, you know, I think a lot of Indigenous people work in Indigenous spaces, not only because we feel comfortable there, but because we also feel a responsibility to be changing the situation in which Indigenous people find themselves in. And I think that is kind of, it's something that I'm passionate about, but at the same time, it also is something that's incredibly draining and very emotional, because it's not just my job, it's, you know, it's my livelihood, it's my family, it's my community, and so, you know, it's a very emotional experience that I'm sort of living through 24/7. And so, you know, I have gone through periods where I get to the point where I'm crying at work every day, because it's, you know, as I said, it's so personal. It's not just a job that I go to from 9 to 5 and go home and switch off. It's something that you're constantly carrying with you and thinking about all the time. So, you know, I think it is a difficult thing to juggle, but I mean, something that I want to do, so it's really hard to find that balance, you know, and that's, I guess, what we're talking about today. How do you do all the things that you want to do, but then also stay sane? So, yeah.
That's a good question to ask yourself. Thank you.
My personal experience is, I guess over time, because I was ambitious and fairly determined to kind of have a career where I got to a position like a CEO, and I'm fortunate enough to be there now, I certainly had a sense that I had to work harder than the boys. And some, I don't know if I made that up or not in hindsight, but I believed that, and therefore I did that. And here I am, but it came at a cost, no question. Because it means that I would do the extra. I would try that little bit harder in order to get noticed, in order to get those opportunities. So that was the career bit. And then 2.5 years ago, I had a baby. We had a baby. Claire's my wife, by the way. And
A bit of nepotism here first.
yeah. Best to be upfront about it. Yeah. And that's when the states got a whole new level. And I'm one of 6 children, and my mum, I always looked at her and I thought, God, she makes this look so easy. So I never truly understood the demands of motherhood. And let me just say, it is by far the hardest job I've ever done, without question. Physically, I am so tired and knackered, and you know, there's not a moment where I feel fresh anymore. And I just have this whole other new respect for that job. I always feel like I'm doing shit at it as well, so the anxiety goes up a whole other level. I never feel good at it. whereas in my professional life, I get enough accolades or enough feedback to say that I'm good at it. So that changed everything for me. So I think I'm heading for burnout. Help me.
We'll talk later.
I actually reflected last night about the times over my career that I've had burnout. One was particularly bad. I was working at a large telco and kind of doing a day job and then working on a big project in the evening for them. I was at my fittest. I was rowing to go overseas for a competition and training 5 mornings a week, so I was burning the candle at both ends. And I thought I could do it because I was pre-kids and ambitious and you want to do all these things. And basically one day I just passed out at work. I had a day off, and then I got in trouble for having a day off. And then the alarm bells went off for me, and I said, this is not the type of place that I need to work for me. Luckily, I was going overseas not long after to compete. But it really made me stop. In those last 2 months I was there, I pulled back, and I just had to go at 90% instead of 110%. And so sometimes you have to check yourself. But more recently, I was sharing this morning, my son had been sick, he's 7, so post-kids, again in a different world, and he had a fever, and he had quite a bad fever, and so I had no sleep for about 6 or 7 nights over these 10 days, and so I had a huge workload at the same time, and I thought, I can't stop, but what can I control? And the only thing I could control, because I couldn't control workload, I couldn't control my son being sick and me having no sleep, but I could control what I actually put in my body. So I said for those 10 days, eat the healthiest food you can possibly eat. And luckily there's this new cafe that's just opened over in Grosvenor Place that would help me with that. No alcohol, and just really helped me get through that time. But I do admit I got to the Friday night and I did have some red wine to get me through that last bit.
That is a great piece of advice. Thank you, Gina, the wine.
It's all about balance.
Obviously at the end of the week, not in the middle of the week, or maybe Thursday, Wednesday. Nick, what do you think women need to do in order to avoid burnout or even possibly thrive?
It's a little bit, in some ways, counterintuitive because the best thing we can do is take time out. I've realised, and for someone, I mean, we're all here, we all care about our careers, we're all ambitious people, and therefore our instinct is to go hard at it and, like I said, do more, be more. But I'm just finding, and there's small techniques of time out, walks, the cafe in the morning for 45 minutes, we learn to meditate. Just things like that can make the world of difference because it just slows everything down and just puts things in perspective. And that's my kind of best technique at the moment. But I mean, I'm sure there's so many others that people can share. But that's my little trick at the moment.
If I can also share with you, and I am a sharer, is I suppose we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and it's interesting that you talked about the 90%, and what your 90% might be other people's 70% or 110%. I'm also going to share with you that I'm also very aspirational. I was CMO in my last role. I'm in career transition, and I just ended up with the best job in the world. And that's because I didn't think about title, I didn't think about the organisation, it was around my network, it was going and really, and feeling again authentic. And I was just sharing, I've only been in the role for 5 weeks now, but my first day I was pinching myself. It is, imagine marketing in Australia. So I think that's another for me, is just being kind to yourself, but also just think about your expectations and really what's the most important thing for you. And I really believe if you feel good about it and there's a deep feeling of connection and you're true to your values, then from a professional point of view, you'll do awesome. And that really does roll across into your personal life. I know I'm a much better mother at the moment, and I'm a much better wife at the moment because I'm a lot happier and I don't have the stress that I'd had for the last 3 or 4 years.
I think you have to be comfortable in not living up to your high expectations, and that actually it's okay to just, feel shit sometimes and to feel like you can't accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. I think, I get to the point sometimes where I think it is kind of a double-edged sword, because when you're feeling shit, you don't want to do things to make yourself feel better, because you're in that point where you're just feeling so hopeless, so down. And so it is really hard to, go for a walk or to eat healthily or, all these things that people tell you to do. And so it's a tricky thing, and I think sometimes that's when I have to just go, you know what, it's okay that I'm just going to spend today in bed and not do anything and order Uber Eats and, I think you have to give yourself permission to shut down sometimes, and that's actually okay. Then once you're getting a little bit more energy, you can then think about, okay, what are some things that I can do to at least help me to not get to that low point next time. But yeah, I think for me, it's been a long process in actually learning that it's okay to, just feel not great sometimes, and you just have to give yourself permission to do that.
That's so true. Shannan, why do you think it is that younger people, I'm going to say the word millennial, but I hate myself for saying it because it's kind of a bit everything and nothing word. Why do you think younger people are vulnerable to burnout and feeling stressed?
Yeah, I think that's it's a tricky one, and I was thinking about this.
Would you like water, by the way? I'm conscious that I'm really thirsty. Are you guys thirsty? Water, sorry.
I don't know, I feel kind of in different minds about that, and I think, if I just think about my own experience, as a younger person, I guess probably because of the internet and social media, there's a lot more opportunities for young people. So for me personally, I think also, in the work that I do, I not only have my day job, I also am doing a lot of commitments outside of work, that I'm constantly kind of on. I think that's probably what a lot of it is about, is you're just constantly on. And I think social media feeds into that as well, because I think our brains are just constantly stimulated. And so I think that plays a big part, but also because we're now so kind of interconnected into people's lives, I think that we make much harsher judgments of ourselves based on what other people are doing. And so we're seeing these kind of snippets of people's lives and thinking that that's the bar, and that, they're, doing all these things that I'm not doing, so I should do those things. And I think that the fact that, not only are women multitaskers, we're also, now taking that to the next level. And that is tiring. So I think that maybe the expectations that we're setting for ourselves based on what we're seeing from other people is one of the factors in why younger people are kind of feeling this burnout, because they're feeling as if they are never kind of reaching their apparent full potential.
It's so easy when you're sort of sitting here and you can see clearly, you understand why it's happening. Do you think like that when you're in the moment of scrolling through Instagram or doing whatever you're doing? Are you able to go, hang on a second? Would you get, how easy is it to get sucked in?
Oh, it's so easy. Because social media it's great, but it's also the devil. And I'm trying to move away from it, but I use social media as a way to switch off, but you're not actually switching off. And so, I'll spend long days working, and then, I might have an event or something after work, or some kind of engagement in my extracurricular activities, and then I'll hop into bed, and the first thing that I do is just pick up my phone and scroll through Instagram. It's like a way of kind of unwinding, which is, when you think about it, that doesn't really make sense. And so then, you can then spend hours just looking on social media, and you realise, shit, it's 1 o'clock, what have I been doing? I think that we do have to figure out where to find that balance. And I mean, I don't know how to do that. I'm still struggling with trying to figure that out. But I think I am trying to be more mindful of it outside of the time, and trying to replace that with different things like reading a book, which I don't really do that much, but you try and tell yourself that that's a better alternative. So yeah, I mean, I think it's, as I said, it's, you can't beat yourself up about these things, but you've got to think about maybe outside of the time, how can I potentially, use that time better in the future.
Absolutely, thank you. Nicole, the World Economic Forum have put creativity as the #3 most valuable skill for the future of work. What is the link between women's well-being and creativity?
Firstly, I'm in the right job. Excellent. Look, I kind of, it was probably one of the biggest insights I had when I got this job was I kind of observed that creativity wasn't as high or as good as it needed to be in our industry. And our industry does lots of wonderful things, but I thought creativity exists in so many other places now. And my sense was that it was, thriving in other places. And we were kind of struggling with it a bit. And when I looked at it, firstly, probably not diverse enough, we know that, so the role of women within that is hugely critical to creativity, just different perspectives equal creativity. So that's necessary, and we're lagging on that. And then the second thing is, I went, what are our conditions for creativity? How are we supporting people to be creative? And I had this visual of, traffic, which is the function in an agency that kind of decide who gets the briefs and, put the timelines on the briefs. And they're kind of, firstly, they're wonderful humans who do a thankless job, but it's hardcore, right? These creatives are given, tasks, and there's someone timekeeping them, and they're at their desk and got their earphones on and they're staring at screens, and I went, oh my God, we've become efficiency obsessed as well. We've removed all the wonderful softer elements that are necessary for creativity to happen. And we've got less people asking them to do more, and I can see the look in their eye. They feel stressed, they feel under pressure constantly. So I did a bit of reading on that, and there's a whole heap of neuroscience that support, funnily enough, some of the traditional methods. So a ping pong table is actually a really good idea.
Just a cliche.
It's a cliche, and I don't know, they put that in originally knowing how good that would be for creativity to happen. But creativity is about joining dots on things, and the only way that's going to happen, the only way that lateral thinking is going to happen is if you've got people in that mode. And that mode is system 1. Anyway, there's a technical term for it, but it's the mode of instinct, right? Of subconscious. So you have to be doing something other than sitting at your desk, reading emails, and having someone over your shoulder going, "Where the hell is it? It's going to be late." So we have to create the space for this to happen. So the ping pong table's alive and well. And there's evidence that say ping pong, table tennis in particular, is an excellent exercise for lateral thinking to take place. We have to have zones that are tech-free, and we just built one of those because I look at these young people who are on social media all day as well, have their headphones on and don't talk to anyone, literally, for the day. So disconnected big time, but sitting next to people. And the other thing is get out into society, into the real world, because, again, there's evidence that says the more we connect and talk to diverse and different people, not our bubble of Sydney or the eastern suburbs in particular, the better we will be, the more creative we will be. So we've got a lot of work to do as an industry to, I guess, foster and create the right conditions for that to happen. But it is happening, and it's not a coincidence that people like Facebook, Google, and other great technology businesses have that really top of mind in terms of their work environments and the sort of policies that they create for flexibility, etc., to help make that happen.
Thank you. So I think, is Kat here from Facebook? Hello. Would you like to do a tour of your office after this session for everyone? Just to come and see how you're doing it? Thank you. So Gina, you've got responsibility for both well-being and inclusion. What's the link between the two?
So I was really thrilled when Wellbeing came into the portfolio, because to me it made a lot of sense, and in other organisations it sometimes sits in social sustainability or safety, and so it really came together for us. And the way I've positioned it is it's the foundation of the D&I agenda. So if you've got a well, safe, ethical, productive workforce that's ready for the future, that enables you to create the environments that you want around inclusion, trust, respect, and they're the values you want your people to do, so you can deliver what your clients want. So that's kind of how we've put it together. And I don't think you can have one without the other. I mean, and you know personally, when you're feeling great, and you can come to work and you just churn through stuff and you can create amazing things. You come to work and you're feeling pretty awful, pretty ordinary, you're not going to be able to do that. And it does impact then the people around you. And I know when there's days when I don't feel like talking because I'm just exhausted. And I think, what do I need to do to do what I need to do for my team, but also find some energy and time for me to recover from all the stuff I've had to do the days before. So it's a very important link, and it's one that we're really pushing hard to make sure that it makes sense for everybody within the organisation, and that they see that link and that connection. And it very much does come back to, how do you find the right mix for people to be creative, to come up with those solutions for your clients. Otherwise, you know, what we've got to offer, haven't got new ideas.
Great. I was going to come to you, Michaela, but we have an emergency on the second stool. Also, those stools don't look enormously comfortable. I'm kind of watching you and admiring you all sitting there, so still. Okay, Michaela, so in your opinion, how much of Australia's future success relies on women having the capacity to contribute?
Well, absolutely 100%. I think the contribution is both women and men. I think around this topic in particular, it's great just to follow on from Gina in terms of the importance of diversity, inclusion and wellbeing. And I think as women, and particularly the story I told you, I was asked to share the story, but it's our contribution is about that diversity, inclusion, wellbeing, and also, and I think having the ability then to have the hard conversations. When I say the hard conversations, it means making sure you're not compromising your values and being very direct. I suppose, you know, my observation too is being able to, whether it's making the changes from a creative point of view, having the conversations, but I think that's also where we can be a lot more efficient. Having worked in oil companies, in telco companies, we probably work for the same big telco, in software companies, I feel this is an amazing time now to, politics are, in my mind, are actually starting to drift away now as there's a different type of leader, and that is the leader which is about the diversity, the inclusion. That's where women have a real role to play. They've got an amazing opportunity at, you know, whatever age, but also too across geographies. And I'm also seeing that now. I've been very fortunate to have a real focus at the moment on Southeast Asia and China. And I'm really excited about the role that I can play in really helping having those conversations, because we're all now, it's a global village. And while we may be maybe a little bit more forward in our thinking in Australia or the US or the UK, I think there's a great opportunity with our colleagues and our network in other parts of the world.
And currently, when we talk about well-being and burnouts, it kind of sits in that arguably more fluffy social space. Would it benefit the workforce to move it into an economic conversation?
Absolutely, and I know there are numbers around, say for example, mindfulness, and there was a Harvard Business Review article which, when I was at the HR or the people of culture team, passed around, but there was definitely an economic benefit in terms of well-being. I know for me, I downloaded the mindfulness app, and I did though find the one it only took you 4 or 5 minutes, so it was efficient. But it's interesting too, Claire, is I'm also, my son's school, they offer mindfulness now. They offer mindfulness. From my perspective, that was also about that longer term economic contribution, because we all know, to Gina's point, when you're happy, when you're grounded, you do amazing work, you churn stuff up, you have an amazing idea, and that is how we're going to be a lot more creative, and that is going to be able to contribute from an economic point of view.
Right, you're absolutely right. There's some really interesting studies happening at the moment looking at schools and the impact of positive psychology on the students' well-being, and then how it affects their whole world, not just their grades, but how they turn up at home, how they turn up in the future, and it's amazing to see it. Let's hope it continues. Great. So I now am going to ask Sean to come back in, because we're going to do a little audience participation, 5 minutes of fun. Sean, you come and explain, because...
Yeah, thank you. So, 5 minutes of fun might be a little bit of setting that expectation a bit high. So, one of the things that we thought we'd take the opportunity to do today is we really want to ask all of you here to get involved, right? So, one of the things that we've noticed as we've been doing this work in the creative industries is that there's no consistency, I guess, in the maturity of thinking around supporting well-being, right? So we all know that well-being, we know the why, right? We know why well-being is important. What's harder is the how, right? What are the things that we need to be doing? And so we've created, I think we're going to get in here, a wee survey. It takes about 3 minutes, essentially, which is the fun activity. Right, which is actually looking at, I guess, best practice in terms of the components that make up a mature wellbeing strategy, right? And what we're wanting to see is where are Australian businesses sitting on this? It's an anonymous survey, right? So you won't get in trouble for telling the truth, essentially, about what your workplace is doing at the moment. But what this will do is start to allow us to go, okay, how do we, I guess, give employers and workplaces best practice frameworks, essentially, to say this is what we believe is the how that will support women and all of us, I guess, to be more well in our workplaces, be more happy. So we'd love you if you could do that. The other thing I wanted to say is that we will also send you all a copy of the report that we've done off the bat. So I said we've worked with over 1,000 professional women, so there's about 120,000 data points that we've looked at, and we've created a report that's looked at some of the root causes, not just the symptoms that we're seeing in terms of women only feeling they have enough energy less than half the time, but what are the complexities that sort of sit behind that, and what skills do we need to learn? So we really appreciate you doing this, sharing this with your network as well. And once we've done this, this is also going to be shared and collaborated on with the University of Sydney Business School as well, to make sure that we're able to put out something which is useful. Right, so thank you for that. We should have some music or something.
Okay. We've got 3 minutes, so I just will do interpretive dancing. Actually, what I will do is give Sean and his Energx business a bit of a plug, because if you walk out of here today and you feel like you are lacking in energy, or your organisation feels a bit lacklustre, or you can see evidence of burnout, he's the guy that you need to bring in, because he can do the analysis on your team, on your workforce, and he can actually help you very practically come up with ways to increase the energy and reduce the burnout. So now I'm going to try to stand here awkwardly for a while as you fill out your survey. Is it literally 3 minutes? I think I've done it actually. It is 3 minutes. Shannan. Oh, right. talking, which I'll take as a sign of you've finished. So, now that you've, I know a couple of you are still finishing it, now you've done your survey, you might be feeling a little bit more different about your energy levels. It might have brought a few things up for you. I've got loads of really awesome questions, but you probably have better ones. So I'm going to hand over to you guys now. Who has got a question to ask these ladies? Yes. Can you do good projection? Or would you like a mic? Excellent. We're all going to be off sick tomorrow. Thank you very much. A lady at the front's feeling very sick. Took a sick day yesterday. Felt very guilty. Logged on a bit. Feels like she should be at home again today. So, what can you do to stop the guilt that you feel when you take a sick day?
Okay, a moment of truth. Who feels that themselves? So you're not alone. I try to come back for myself personally and say, what are my boundaries and what is the balance I need? And it is hard. And you have to check yourself. From an organisational level, there is a duty of care as a manager of people to put them at ease. So whenever one of my team contact me and say, I'm feeling a bit sick, I don't know if I'll be in, I say, don't come in. It's okay. Just get better, because I want you to get better so you can come back and flourish. So it's around the duty of the manager, and not every manager is going to be that, so you can't control that. What you can control is the boundaries that you set for yourself, and you're not going to lose your job if you take a day off sick. So just be, okay with that. And I mean, it's a hard question to answer, it really is, because it's such a personal thing. And we're doing a lot of work now around flexible work, and trying to put a label on what we're calling microflex, which is those times when, oh my God, I've broken my tooth, I've got to go to the dentist, I can only get an appointment at 3 p.m. And having that peace of mind that it's okay for you to go for that half-hour appointment to the dentist, and we're trying to put a label on it and make it a reality of a type of flex that actually takes the pressure off a lot of people. So this is an example. So I think there's stuff that organisations can do better, people as managers can do better, but also you have to take that and just be okay with it. Sometimes you will start to feel guilty, but you just have to try as hard as you can to let it go, because you can't control other people.
And if I can say, as a manager, I don't want you in the office. And we talked about the economic value is, I want you to get better really quickly, and the only way you're going to do that is actually to look after yourself. If you come into the office, other people are going to get sick. The other thing too is you are on to check emails, that's awesome, but please don't do any work because you're probably not being your best self. So that also could have an impact too on the work. And so you're the priority, and once you're amazing, then the work will come afterwards.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Thank you, Lady Davis.
Hi. So I'm, I guess, paid to be creative, and I think that affects my energy levels a lot because it's really hard to be creative 9 to 5 every day. And I think maybe in some industries people would understand a bit more. I sometimes think if I was an artist or something, people might understand I can't produce a painting every day, but my skill's writing. So I just wonder, how do you articulate, or how do you say to your boss, like, I actually can't be creative all the time, I need a break. Like, I need, as you said before, I need the space to think.
Yeah. Yeah. This relies on other people understanding that to some extent, but educate them. There's so much research on this topic now that says that's a necessary part of me being creative, in fact. So that exists, that can help. So talk about it openly. And I think, the other piece that I said, it doesn't mean we need more time, it's how we use our time. We can't live in a kind of pretend world either and go, well, if clients only gave us more time, we'd be fine. That's not what we're asking. It's like, we're in control of how we use our time. So I think I'm almost of the view that there's a practice where we give a brief to a creative and we're like, for the next day, don't do anything. I don't want you to think about it. I don't want you to come in. I want you to go and lay in the park. And I want you to or catch buses out to Campbelltown, I don't know. Do anything other than think about this brief. And then on day 2, come in and use your other side of your brain to kind of get some stuff down on paper and experiment with how you use your time, and maybe do that discreetly in the first instance, look busy, or go, I'm going to a doctor's appointment, but you're sitting in the park. But yeah, I think thankfully more people are understanding this and being educated on this topic, but of course you can't be creative all the time. But yeah, just talk more openly, I think.
Just sharing, before I did what I do now, I actually used to be a financial analyst, believe it or not. And I found when I run out of steam for the creative side of what I've got to do, I actually revert back to the finance side and sort of do some budgets. But it's the way I reset my brain to go back into the creative mode. So it's finding what's that thing that helps you refresh and start again.
Hi, Muriel from the Black Dog Institute. First, thank you so much for sharing your personal story with us today. My question is around mostly the media and creative agencies space. Safe Work and the state have noted this industry as being as high risk of mental health, mental illness. So my question for you is, as leaders in this industry, what could you do, what can you do to push the agenda not only on well-being, but on mental health at a company level and then at an industry level?
Every industry, but I think do your best to normalise it, and that means sharing your own story as a leader, so being vulnerable on that topic, and then the minute you do that, it's kind of this flurry of other people sharing. So I think it's creating that safe space to allow that to happen. And you can't fake that again. People either know if you're genuine about that topic or not. And I think when these things become popular, there's a lot of try hard, kind of responses to it. But if the intention's good and leaders step up and show some responsibility for this problem by being vulnerable within it, then I think it does change. And I can honestly say, in my job, it is a HR role, and so I make sure I'm available to anyone in the organisation so they can come and share with me what's going on in their life, and we respond to that. But I have to create the time and space for that to happen. But it's a massive problem with everyone in the organisation, if I'm honest. It's not a particular group.
I think I'm very lucky working at a university because there is a huge focus around mental health and the prevalence of it, and it's a very flexible and supportive working environment. But I think, as someone who struggles from depression and anxiety, I have my times where I find it difficult to even express that or talk about that with the people closest to me. And so to even think about discussing that with your boss is a really hard thing to think about. But also you kind of have to remember that they're human too. And even recently I was going through a time of feeling really high anxiety, and I felt so guilty. I felt, like I wasn't doing a good job, and, the anxiety was building on itself. And I just thought, I'm just going to talk about it with my boss, and it's really scary, the idea of it, because also you feel the stigma around it still exists as well. But as soon as I had that conversation with him, I went into his office and I was terrified to have the conversation with him, and I just started crying, and he was just so supportive, and just, you know, he said, at the end of the day, you know, like, no one's going to die if you can't do your job or you're struggling, and what's most important is for you to feel healthy and happy, and that's what's most important to me and this team. And I think just breaking down that barrier like made me feel so much better, because I was carrying so much of this, you know, I think so many women have this imposter syndrome of feeling like we're never good enough, we're never doing a good enough job, and that kind of feeds anxiety as well. So just having that conversation, as scary as it was, just made me feel so much better, and I now feel more comfortable with him. If, you know, I will just say, if one day I wake up in the morning and I can't get out of bed and I just can't function, I will say to him, I'm really sorry, but I need a mental health day. And he'll say, that's great, yep, you just do what you need to do and like get yourself back to a better place. So I think it is really, you know, breaking down that barrier and just having that conversation, which is terrifying, but I'm glad that I did.
He sounds like an awesome boss.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. And there was a question here.
I'm curious to know what you think men can do to support women in the workplace. And are there any things that you think men in general kind of aren't getting that would be of help to women, particularly in industries that are seen to be dominated by men?
That's a good one. Who wants to do that? Go, Michaela.
I've got a bit of a bugbear on this one. I think it's, sorry, that's why I just clear my throat. I think it's acknowledging that there is definitely, there's an equal balance in terms of work-life balance. Now, I'll tell you why, this is quite a sore point for me, is that I'm really tired of hearing men when they're picking up their children, they announce it in the office as if they're heroes. And I've heard it I've heard it in a number of, no, I'm serious, I've heard a number of different environments. I've also been in environments where they were very, very, they acknowledge people that work long hours. Suddenly they had, so this is very, very passionate about this. They had a divorce, they then had to share custody of the children. Suddenly then you couldn't contact them when they had their children. So in my mind, and sort of, just a seriousness, it's actually respecting that everyone has children, they have other commitments, and whether you're female or whether you're male, we all have other things outside work. You could be a parent, you could have extracurricular activities, but I think it's also for men not being the hero when it comes to doing some of those other more sort of female roles. Sorry, maybe over passionate about that.
Two things. So I used to work at a very large property and construction company, and heavily male dominated. So I've had interesting conversations in many roundtables with other companies who think they're doing it hard. Let me tell you, when you've got 18% in one of the divisions of women, that's hard. So for men in the workplace is being more aware of how you include women if the men are the dominant group, and how you actually do that. And then more recently, we've been trying to balance up gender equality, coming at it from a different angle around men. And so we were talking earlier, I feel that men are quite often excluded from the diversity and inclusion conversation. They see gender equality, they think women. They see all these events and special programs for women. And so a couple of years ago, we toured the Swedish Dads exhibition at Brengaroo, which celebrated the Swedish dads who took the time out, it's heavily government funded, to spend time with their children. I'm talking extended parental leave, not just a couple of weeks. We morphed into Aussie Dads, we've just done our Deloitte Dads exhibition, and we've changed our parental leave policy to be gender equal. So it's everyone, we very overtly took away the labels of primary and secondary, which to me are just a paste over of maternity and paternity. It's just parental leave. You can co-parent, take it at the same time. You can take it over 3 years, so you can actually take time, both people, to actually transition your kid to daycare, whatever it is. Paying super, there's all these things, we're encouraging more men. As soon as we change it, it's flexible, you can do it part-time, so you can work part-time and do the rest parental leave. It increased in the first 6 months when we did the part-time bit, 128% increase in men taking parental leave extended. So by breaking down some of those barriers, being more overt, you're actually pushing men to do more stuff around the caring and challenging those norms, which then takes pressure off the women. But we didn't ever overtly talk about, and if you guys do this, this will help us, because that's kind of a bit of a, give and take thing. So we just actually focused on the men. But the lovely flow-on effect is it actually starts to make, hopefully, it easier for women to balance some of that stuff and break down some of those crazy things that happen in the office. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit passionate about it too.
As you should be. I think we've got time for one more question. Was there a hand around here?
And I was going to speak to you actually, who was sick at the start, and I thought, I've got something to say to you and something to say to you. So maybe I'll sort of try and answer the first one, and it will affect all of them. But I think that we all have quite a well-developed drive. Historically, it's got more masculine energy to it, not that it's a gender thing, but that kind of heroic, pushing, success-driven, achievement-based. Like, we all talk about knowing that part of ourselves really well, and I think it's that part of yourself that is making you feel guilty for not going to work, and that's got almost like a shape and a voice, and it's quite bullish. And I think part of this, part of the success and the beauty of days like today is to beginning to foster and encourage that more feminine stillness in us, that lesser known part of ourselves that's more compassionate. Because when you can hold that drive and force and direction with the love and compassion, then you've got power. And if you're operating just from one, you've got force. And it's that force that is exhaustive. So it's really important that we're all of it, and that we don't disavow that part of me that says, actually, yesterday you took a bit more, today I need to top myself up, and then as a whole, I can be that best version of myself.
Would you like to be on our next panel? Tomorrow. Same time, same place. Okay, as a final question to each of you, could you give your number one piece of advice for everybody who is leaving here today and going back to the place that they work, that will help them manage their energy levels and keep burnout at a minimum? Who would like to go first? Gina?
I learnt this the hard way. Ask for help. And a friend put in perspective because I felt guilty asking for help. And she said, do you mind giving help to people when they ask you? I said, no, I love it. I love helping people. And she said, well, just be safe in that, knowing that people want to do that for you. So when you're feeling down, you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're trying to deal with kids and the whole stuff, just be okay with asking for help.
Mine is, and it might help you as well, taking sick day. When I've tried to genuinely do something that's way out of my comfort zone and I feel guilty as well, is I remember I'm doing it for others. Like, I've got a job on behalf of the next generation to change things. So I go, I'm taking that sick day, even though I feel guilty, but I know by taking it and doing it proudly that I'm going to help someone in the process. That helped me. It helps me.
My advice from my own self is just be authentic and enjoy what you do. As I've said to people who have just started with Tourism Australia, I may be a bit disruptive in the office, but I'm the same person on a Monday that I am on a Sunday. And I think that way too, if you're authentic, you can be a lot more generous and you can be a lot more calmer and have a lot more energy for some of the hard conversations.
I think it is, just about being open. And so, as I was saying, sometimes having difficult conversations which are hard to get there, but it's actually going to be the best thing in the long term. I guess also another thing is, it's also looking out for your fellow peers as well. So, as well as asking for help, also if you see someone in your workplace struggling, or you can recognise something in them where you feel like they're on the potential to go for burnout, have a conversation with them, have a chat about it, and really try and get to the bottom of how they're feeling, because that will be not only good for you, good for them, but good for the organisation. So I think it is really more about, we've just got to be open about these things. They're tricky conversations, but at the end of the day, it's going to mean more than just not saying anything. So yeah, I think that's...
Awesome, amazing piece of advice. I think we are extremely lucky to have had these wonderful ladies here today for taking up your time to give us all of your words of wisdom. So Shannan, Michaela, Nick, and Gina. Could we have a big round of applause, please? Instead of giving you the usual bottle of wine, which will probably just make you put a straw in it, drink it immediately, we're actually going to make a donation to Dress for Success. It's a registered charity that improves women's employability by giving them clothes that you might not want anymore, might not work for you anymore, but will certainly work for someone else. They're an amazing charity. So if you ever get stuck, you get fed up with your clothes, then don't throw them out. Give them to Dress for Success. Thank you very much indeed for coming today. Like, we are thrilled. Sean, come here, co-worker buddy. We're really thrilled that people want to talk about this. This is really important. I'm really fucking excited because men have an audience. And we should do more of these, absolutely. So thank you very much for coming today and have a great day. And would you like to say something, Sean?
Can we have a round of applause for Claire as well? Awesome job. To be honest, when I first created the report, I didn't really know what to do with it. And I didn't want to be one of those mansplainer people. And so I came to Claire and I said, look, what do you think? I think we've got some valuable data here to contribute to the conversation. And it's really been with Claire's support that we've been able to put this on. And we've actually even had some requests for other cities. So we'll see how we go with that. But
it's going to be a global tour.
Maybe a global tour. But really today was, we had two real objectives. One is that we don't want people to feel alone in this situation, that there's a lot of people experiencing this. And secondly, to have some great practical tips to take away, really just to destigmatize self-care in a way, that it's okay to take time out and to look after ourselves. So thank you so much for your time this morning and for contributing as well to the survey. If you've got any questions at all, let us know. Thank you so much.